I promised our last presenter that he would have his full allocated time. So it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Florian Buchner, who is from the University of Applied Sciences in Austria. He's going to tell us about the challenge feedback learning.
Thanks a lot, Emma. Let me, before I start with the presentation, spend a minute on Jim Burgess, and let me go back about 7 years ago when I talked on a European Health Economics Association conference to Bill Swan about the idea having a session on teaching health economics, and he told me Jim Burgess has the same idea and brought us together. And then we had the first session 6 years ago in Toronto on teaching health economics, and then it was half European presenters and half US presenters. And as you can see in the list of presenters, on the long run, Jim's influence and impact was a lot higher than mine. And one of the great things he did was to bring Ellen on board, who is doing a great job in doing this. But what I want to emphasize is Jim would for sure have loved to see this room completely full with people interested in teaching health economics, and I think that's worth to be mentioned here once more, because he has a great impact on that we are all here and can do this. So that was just a short remark. Going to what I call learning by challenge. It's a concept I developed together with a colleague of mine, Dietmar Sternhardt, from the School of Economics at our university. And what I'm going to present, I will give you a very short idea of the basic structure. I will present 3 good practice examples to give you an understanding what is meant by that concept. And then I will show you the 4 core elements, a few remarks on the objectives and the embedding. Then there's another issue I think it's very important. It's making learning visible. I will have some consideration on that, and I will conclude with a summary. So let's start with the basic concept, and this student-centered form of teaching is based on 4 elements. The first is, as the name says, a challenge. It should be quite a big challenge for the students. At the end, it's a challenge for the teachers as well. And as a reaction on this challenge, the students have to act. And after this, we have a feedback, which is very important, on that act, which refers to that act. And at the end, there should be a reflection. And the reflection is on what the students did and on the feedback they got from the teachers. To make this abstract idea a bit more concrete, there are 3 good practice examples. The one is Noricum. It's a concept where students have the challenge to develop over a semester a completely new healthcare system. They have to do the legislation, they have to do the contracts, they have to think about how to build up such a system by playing the roles of the different interest groups within such a healthcare system. That's quite a challenge. They have never done something like this. And after they have developed this, they get a 1-day feedback workshop. We are working on that. The second example is the so-called OECD conference. We do, meanwhile, I think it's the 12th OECD conference. It's a university internal conference, and the students get, at the beginning of the semester, an invitation for this conference. And during the semester, they have to develop their own research question. They have to write a paper on this research question. It's going through a review process. And at the end of the semester, they present the paper, their research work on the internal conference. A third example is, which is done by my colleague, Dietmar Sternert, is the so-called 24 hours challenge. Students have to do in this course of international management, they have to develop a strategy for a company to enter a new foreign market, and they have to do this within 24 hours. So there's quite some time pressure on them, and that's a challenge, a huge challenge for them as well. So these are the three examples. Now I want to go through the 4 steps I presented to you, and the most important, of course, is the challenge. And so I will spend some time on explaining what do we mean by a challenge. It should be a very demanding challenge. The students really have to focus on, and they need their full attention to solve the problems. So what are from our perspective, the most important criteria for such a challenge? We want to have a longer phase where the students do not get any feedback on any intervention from the teachers. So they work by themselves. And there's even no reconfirmation. They cannot come up to the teachers and ask, is this a good research question for a research paper, or should we as the government do this and that? They have to take the responsibility for what they are doing by themselves. So they have a high level of freedom doing what they want to do. And very important, there is no textbook solution. They may try to reach. As you know, there's no perfect healthcare system. So they try to do it as good as possible, but there's nothing they have to come close to. This also creates, there are also some other criteria you may use, like the time pressure, that, like multidisciplinarity and comprehensive part, completely new approach. All these things may be part of such a challenge. The ACT is more or less the other side of it. What's coming to the students from this challenge, and there are several things possible. Very important, students have to tackle with insecurity. They do not know whether they are on the right way or not. They have to tackle with unstructured problems. There are problems they do not know how to handle. And there is quite some frustration. They are sometimes going dead ends, but that's part of the learning process in what we are doing. So that's part of what we intend them to do. So by having no intervention, no reconfirmation, and nothing like a standard solution, we create space for creative thinking. There is necessity of critical thinking for the students. They have to evaluate their own solutions. They have to think about that, and they have to be critical. There's for sure some degree of uncertainty on the student side, and that's the other side of this. Having some degree of uncertainty, there's also an IKEA effect, which is named by after the well-known Swedish furniture brand, and it's meant by this is they are proud of what they are doing. They have built it by themselves. They have written their first research paper. They have developed their own healthcare system. So they are proud of it. There is emotion coming into it, and so it's something what's necessary for really learning. They are proud of their own work. This high level of freedom has to be limited by a clear framework of rules. That's one thing which is very important, and it has to be counterbalanced by quite some feedback. Coming first to the framework of the limits of this high level of freedom we give to them. There have to be very clear rules of the game, and they have to get these rules in advance. There have to be a detailed time schedule. It's very important. and it shouldn't be changed during the semester. They should be at last secure about this framework. It's also very important to tell them at the beginning how the remarking works, and they may ask questions: how do they get their how the marking works? How they get their marks? What's for us crucial to give marks on? And the learning objectives should be, and there are quite a lot of learning objectives, should be transparent to them. And it may be necessary to present the learning objectives at the beginning and once more at the end of the course, because sometimes they lose the idea of the learning objective. So we do it normally twice, at the beginning and at the end. So a high level of freedom, but clearly limited by detailed rules of a game and clear concept limits. The third element is the feedback. And I like a lot this quote of Ericsson and his colleagues: in the absence of adequate feedback, efficient learning is impossible and improvement only minimal, also for highly motivated subjects. And that's, at least for our approach, very important. Yes, without a feedback and a comprehensive feedback, that makes no sense to send the students on such a travel, bringing with such a challenge. So the feedback should be some counterbalance of the freedom, and it's not only the feedback of the teachers giving to the students, but we try also to implement some feedback from students to students, like a review process, like in the negotiations. They get the feedback whether they are well prepared or not by their result in the negotiations with their colleagues. And a feedback of the students is very important to improve our concepts. This is still work in progress, so if we get some important feedback from the students, it's especially in the first rounds, we change the concept in some important issues. Some further remarks. As I said, there is quite some frustration sometimes for the students, which is part of the learning, which is part of reflecting reality. What's our objective? And then at the end, it's crucial to really recognize the effort or the energy that students put into this project, into their research paper, into the new developed healthcare system. There is a lot which can be improved in their ideas. And it's important to tell them what they could do better. But it's very important as well to really recognize what they have done and how much energy they put into that, and that we as teachers recognize that they had to go sometimes to that ends. Feedback also should be on different levels. There should be the level of content, there should be the level of process, and there should be the level of self-regulation. Coming to the reflection, which is at the beginning it was not so important a part of our concept. Meanwhile, I think it's a very important part as well. And the title of a book brings it to a point. Reflection, turning experience into learning. That's why we do this reflection. And students should at the end write down their experience, what they think they have learned on a page, should write that down and load it up on wherever, or send it to us via email. It's not part of the marking. It's part of the course. And it's done for themselves. Nevertheless, it's helpful for us to see what they might have learned. So these are the 4 elements which are important for us to make things like that, to give them a challenge and make them learn out of this challenge and what they have done. There are a lot of objectives, and I do not want to tell all of this to you. That's quite objective. You have skills as well, which are trained here. What's a core objective, what you cannot achieve with all with a normal way of teaching, is giving students a playing field for exercising creative, independent, critical thinking. And that's something very important for us. We want to have this as part of such a concept. And for doing this, you have quite some some conditions you need to really realize this. And that's given in this quote of Buchner and Sternberg. Critical thinking skills cannot be utilized in the absence of knowledge. They need something about, students need something about which to think critically. So for having such a challenge, it's necessary that students already know something. So they have to have some health economics courses, or courses on public health, or courses on health management, or courses on ethics, or whatever. So they should have some knowledge already to go into such a challenge. And that's why it's crucial to embed this concept carefully into the curriculum. You can do it, or you can use it, for example, as a capstone course, more or less at the end of a program. We don't do it exactly like this, because then it's in conflict with writing their final thesis, and they need quite some energy to write the thesis. So we put these courses normally in the semester just before they start to write their final thesis. The last consideration I want to share with you is is well given by this quote of John Hattie. The major message, however, is that rather than recommending a particular teaching method, teachers need to be evaluators of the effect of the methods that they choose. So it's not that I say, oh, fine, we developed a new approach and you should, and everybody should use this approach because it's better than any other approach. No, probably there are approaches very similar to that. The question is, how does it work? What's the effect? Can we measure that? Can we make visible what students learn? And I think that's a crucial question we should ask more often in what we are doing. What we can do by this is we can make visible what students learned in the courses before these challenges. What did they learn, and how can they transfer what they learned in health economics, in healthcare management courses, in statistics courses? But what we cannot do so far is really measure what they learn by exactly this challenging course. We get some feedback anecdotally that the students tell us, oh, it was very fine to have this OECD conference, it helped a lot for writing the master thesis or the bachelor thesis, or they tell us it was very similar to what we faced in our working experience years after, and it prepared us very well. But that's only singular statements we get. It's not systematic, and so we have, at the moment, not really a systematic approach to measure it. And of course, these statements are not unbiased. So that's the next step. That should be a challenge for the future. And I talked a few weeks ago to John Hattie, and there are some ideas to improve this and to go a step further on this. And perhaps in 2 years in Basel, it's possible to present something on that. Okay, just summarizing what's the whole thing about. It's a demanding challenge which produces a lot of freedom by no intervention, no reconfirmation of the teachers for some time. It gives the opportunity of independent and critical thinking, but it has to be counterbalanced by comprehensive feedback, and that's a lot of work for the teachers. Don't underestimate what you have to do in such a case. And it's possible to make learning visible, but that's still work in progress and a challenge for us as teachers. Thanks.
Thank you. So, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask about that specific presentation?
What did you mean by feedback on self-regulation? When you say self-regulation, I know what I mean.
Yeah.
What did you mean by it?
Did the students really think about their ideas, what they wanted to achieve, for example, in the negotiations for the new healthcare system, and did that work? And the next time, did they try something else? Did they really go these things? Did they think about different approaches and improve this step by step?
So how do you as a teacher give feedback on that? Because you can't be inside their head.
No, but that's we have for this health system Noricum approach, we have a one-day feedback workshop, and we talk about that. Did you think about that? How did you approach these things? It was a completely new idea. You had nobody to ask. How did you go there? What did you do when you realized it's a dead end? We have to try anything else. So yes, it's not easy, but it's done. It's one of the crucial things, and we have one day for doing all different levels of feedback, and we come to this. This is very important, because you can do it with this approach, and you cannot do it with a final exam normally.
Okay, there's a question over there.
You had mentioned that one of the attributes of this was that students could learn how to cope with frustration.
Yeah.
Do you offer them any special skills to help enhance their coping with their frustration?
Actually, no. There is the only offer we do is we offer if there is really a problem in the group. It's most done in small groups. If they have conflicts in the group, we are open to help solving these conflicts. No, we go because we prepare more or less a safety net, a safe playground, and we try to do this in our feedback and strengthen them to say, you have achieved it. Yes, you had to go through some frustrating periods, but you did it, and you did it by yourself without our help. It's your work, and that at the end you have this IKEA effect, and that makes them quite happy. They are really proud, and they are proud because we had no intermediate phase where they may come to us and say, oh, we are very frustrated, what should we do? No, they have to cope it by themselves, and that's reality. They have to do it in their working life later. Now we have a safe playground, and yeah, so no, definitely there is no offer to do that.
So
how do you evaluate their work and the outcome of their work? And
Yeah.
you know, what if they don't successfully overcome either their individual or collective failure, and the health system in fact is really not very good? Or I mean, does that matter? Does quality of the output of the challenge matter?
Yeah, it matters. It matters, and that's where we as teachers come, and not anybody of the room here probably could do it, but you have to have some experience in health economics in this area, and normally we do it from two sides. So, for example, when we developed it, a colleague of mine who was professor in public health and me as a health economist, we came from two different sides, and so yeah, we are discussing the solutions among us, and at the end there is some subjective in the marking, no question, but you can't avoid that, and also that it's reality. If you work for any country and give some expertise, it depends on to whom you deliver that. So yes, does it answer your question?
Well, does the frustration ever, are there ever cases where they really cannot overcome the frustration and that affects the quality of their output, I guess? Have you observed that?
No, we didn't. What we observed, it was once in these 12 times OECD conference that we had conflicts in the group that were really high, and we split the group. That means it's 120 groups to 150 groups, and it was only once. And we had one that was very interesting in the Noricum. There were two groups. They were fighting each other because one tried to abolish the pharmacies, and the pharmacies were not very happy, and they did it not obviously, but behind the scene, and they were really angry about each other. So we had to do this in the feedback session to really bring that down, to solve that. Yeah, that may happen, but it's more the fighting, and it's because they are really engaged. It's on the other hand, it shows, it makes something with the students.
It's very interesting. I was wondering about which is the relation you establish between this kind of course and the thesis. You thought about trying to help them to choose one way or one subject or another, and what is the effect that you have measured?
Unfortunately, that's one disadvantage so far. We cannot measure the effect. They tell us, they reflect about that, but that's not really a really good measure. I think what does it help for writing a bachelor or master thesis is especially at the OECD conference. They get the structure of a research paper. They know how to come to a research question. How to choose the method, how to do these things. They have learned, they tried it several times, they failed sometimes, then they come back, they do it, they get the feedback via review, and at the end, they get the feedback from us. So there are quite a few steps. They learn, they write it down, and they tell us, it's not all of them, but from time to time, it's very helpful for writing the bachelor thesis. But we are working on making this really visible and making a measure to show it within 2 years, perhaps.